I'm Hannah Hally, and welcome back to Icons of Influence, the series where we explore how influence is built, shaped, and sustained across business, culture, and leadership. Today's episode is about one of the most mythologized figures in modern business history, a founder, a visionary, a provocateur, and a leader whose influence continues long after his death. This is the story of Steve Jobs. His journey shows us how vision becomes power, how obsession can fuel excellence, and how influence is often forged through tension, intensity, and uncompromising standards. Steve Jobs was born in 1955 and adopted shortly after birth. That early experience of being chosen, but also separated, became a recurring theme in how he saw himself and the world. Jobs often spoke about feeling different, separate, driven by a sense that he was here to do something meaningful. He grew up in California during the rise of Silicon Valley, absorbing the counterculture of the 1960s and 70s. Electronics, spirituality, calligraphy, Zen Buddhism. These influences blended into a worldview that rejected convention and embraced intuition, simplicity, and beauty. Jobs wasn't a traditional engineer. He didn't code at the deepest level. What he possessed instead was taste, an ability to see how technology could intersect with human behavior, aesthetics, and emotion. That insight would become his superpower. From the beginning, Jobs believed computers shouldn't just work. They should feel intuitive, elegant, and personal. Apple was founded in 1976 by Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak, and Ronald Wayne. But from the start, Jobs positioned himself not as the builder, but as the storyteller. He understood that innovation without narrative doesn't scale. The Apple II and later the Macintosh weren't just technological breakthroughs, they were cultural statements. Jobs framed Apple as the rebel alternative to corporate computing, positioning the company against conformity, bureaucracy, and sameness. This positioning was deliberate. Jobs wasn't just selling machines, then he was selling identity. To buy Apple was to align yourself with creativity, individuality, and thinking differently. But behind the mythology was tension. Jobs was demanding, volatile, often brutal. His leadership style was polarizing. Teams were pushed relentlessly. Failure wasn't tolerated. Excellence was expected. Always. This intensity produced extraordinary results, but it also sowed the seeds of conflict. In 1985, Steve Jobs was forced out of Apple, the company he helped create. Internal power struggles, missed expectations, and clashes with leadership culminated in his removal. For many founders, this would have been the end. For Jobs, it became the most important chapter of his evolution. He founded Next, a company that struggled commercially but refined his thinking around software, hardware integration, and system design. He also acquired Pixar, turning it into a world-class animation studio that reshaped storytelling and filmmaking. These years were formative. Jobs matured. He learned patience. He refined his vision. And critically, he learned how to lead without being at the center of everything. When Apple acquired Next in 1997, Jobs returned, not as the same man who left, but as a more focused, disciplined leader. Jobs' return to Apple marked one of the most dramatic corporate turnarounds in history. He simplified the product line, killed underperforming projects, and recentered the company around design, integration, and experience. The iMac, iPod, iPhone, and iPad followed. Products that didn't just succeed commercially, but reshaped entire industries. Jobs understood convergence before it was fashionable. Music, phones, computing, media, all collapsing into seamless ecosystems. Apple didn't chase market research. It shaped demand by anticipating what people didn't yet know they wanted. His influence extended beyond products. Product launches became theatre. Keynotes became cultural events. Jobs mastered storytelling at scale, turning technology releases into moments of collective anticipation. This wasn't charisma by accident. It was rehearsed, intentional, and strategic. Steve Jobs' influence came at a cost. both to himself and those around him. He was known for extreme control, perfectionism, and emotional volatility. He could be inspiring one moment and devastating the next. Many who worked with him describe both trauma and pride. The cost of working at the edge of excellence. Jobs believed deeply that mediocrity was the enemy. He rejected compromise, he demanded focus, and he often prioritized product over people. This raises an uncomfortable but important question. Does greatness require intensity? And if so, at what cost? Jobs' story doesn't offer easy answers, but it forces reflection on the balance between ambition, humanity, and leadership responsibility. Steve Jobs died in 2011, but his influence did not end. Apple's culture of integration, design obsession, and user-centric thinking continues to shape technology. His emphasis on taste, simplicity, and end-to-end control remains embedded in the company's DNA. Jobs also reshaped how leaders think about innovation. He proved that vision matters, that taste matters, that focus matters, and that saying no is as powerful as saying yes. Yet his legacy is complex. He was not a moral role model in every sense. He was imperfect, often difficult, sometimes cruel, but he was undeniably transformative. Steve Jobs' career offers powerful, if challenging, lessons. First, vision creates gravity. People follow those who see clearly and believe fiercely. Second, storytelling scales innovation. Ideas move faster when wrapped in meaning. Third, focus is power. Saying no is a strategic advantage. Fourth, obsession can drive excellence, but it must be managed carefully. Finally, influence outlives individuals when it's embedded into systems, culture, and products. Jobs didn't just build products, he built a philosophy of creation. Steve Jobs was not a comfortable leader, but he was a consequential one. He showed us that influence isn't always gentle, and that innovation often comes from friction, intensity, and refusal to accept the ordinary. His story reminds us that vision must be paired with discipline, that creativity thrives under constraints, and that true influence changes how people see the world. I'm Hannah Hally, and this was Icons of Influence. Until next time, think deeply, build boldly, and remember, the most powerful ideas don't just solve problems, they reshape possibility.